Welcome, everybody. I am excited to see you all here today. A good amount of attendance today. People coming today to learn about facilitating an online course, effective instructional practices. I have the pleasure of presenting today with Phoenix, who is an analyst with the Faculty Technology Center. My name is Mitchell Stolier. I'm an associate learning experience designer on our design and development team here at LSU Online. Just briefly, what I do is I collaborate with faculty to help them create online learning experiences for their online courses and programs. So we kind of like assist and kind of guide you through the process of helping build your online course. And in doing so, we also facilitate faculty workshops on different aspects of course design and partner to help kind of figure out the best approach to sort of like design, develop, and deliver those courses. I work across institutions, so not just LSU A&M, but also with faculty members at LSU Alexandria, Shreveport, and our other family of institutions as well. Before this, I was a elementary, middle, and high school teacher. A lot of my focus was on math and science courses, and I also got to teach online for several years. So online education is kind of near and dear to my heart. I love getting a chance to collaborate with faculty members, and I look forward to working with y'all today. Phoenix, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. My name is Phoenix Mackay. I work with the Faculty Technology Center. So we focus more on the troubleshooting and the how to set up and actually use some of the tools. Uh, so that's also will be the part I'll be covering at the end of this presentation. So we provide both trainings on certain aspects of things on a group setting similar to this, as well as doing as needed training via phone, virtual walk-ins, or people can schedule appointments with us as well. We are not across all institutions, but we serve LSU main campus, LSU online, LSU Eunice, and very soon will be LSU HSC New Orleans.
That's exciting to hear. Thank you, Phoenix. And at the end of this session, we do point to some links related to the Faculty Technology Center. So if you're one of our people who's accessing this from a different LSU institution that's not covered by the Faculty Technology Center, but you're not sure what resources to reach out to, you could certainly reach out to me and I can try to connect you with someone on your team. For example, LSU Alexandria has the IET department that may be able to help you with certain issues related to Moodle, for instance. I would be excited to learn a little bit about you if you don't mind putting in the chat. I guess you can include what institution you're from as well as what you're teaching. Hello, Laura. Yeah, Laura is one of my colleagues. Hello, Sarah. Does Rad Tech, Health Science. I see finance at LSU Shreveport. I see physics. Ed Tech Specialist. Hello, Michelle. Billing and coding. Online recruitment. Currently an enrollment coach. I'm always excited to see people who may not necessarily be teaching a course, but is related to the LSU online process in some way to kind of get a better idea of sort of like the holistic process. I hope you get something good out of this as well. A lot of great. I like the variety of the people who are here. I'm looking forward to talking about these topics with you, and we will have some time at the end for questions if you have them. So let's talk a little bit about the workshop. This workshop's going to be divided into two parts. The first part I'll be presenting will be focused on learning about online students, their characteristics and needs. We'll talk very briefly about facilitating learning with generative AI. I will mention that this is not a training about generative AI, and I can actually point you to some resources that we've prepared that are related to that if that's something you're interested in. And we'll talk about instructor presence, strategy for engagement. We'll be talking about regulatory requirements. And then at that point, after that point, Phoenix will take over and he'll talk and give you a closer look at Moodle. When we get to this stage, if you want to have Moodle, your Moodle course open on your computer, you could definitely follow along if you want to look up certain things during Phoenix's part. I will mention ahead of time that the Moodle that Phoenix uses may not look the same as the one that you're using, depending on which institution you're in. So in those particular cases, it's usually a matter of the functionality is generally the same. You just might have to click in a slightly different place. And then at the end, we'll have time for Q&A. So by the end of this workshop, where you're going to be able to apply strategies to facilitate engagement in an online course. We will be talking about navigating within a Moodle course, editing various activities and resources to ensure that the course setup is optimal for student engagement, and identify Moodle and technology support services and resources to use as assistance as assistance is needed, excuse me. So one thing to mention is that the point of this is to help you and your students have an uninterrupted, seamless experience online. As you know, with so much learning taking place in that online environment, even if you teach a face-to-face course, you may have some elements of your course that you do administer through your Moodle course. So being familiar with ways to help facilitate engagement in those online components of the course will and kind of knowing how to address some of those issues can help you and your students have a great learning experience. I will mention that the primary focus of this session is on fully asynchronous online courses. However, no matter what modality your course is, we hope that the activities in this workshop will help give you some additional information to help have a great facilitate a great a great course for your student, no matter how much online there is. So first, I would like to ask a few questions about you. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a poll. You should see three questions pop up on your screen. If they didn't pop up on your screen, you should have a button on your screen on the bottom of your screen that allows you to pull up the poll. The first question is basically asking if you've ever taught a fully online course, how comfortable you are using Moodle, and if you are currently teaching or plan to teach an online course that's part of a fully online LSU online program. I do want to mention, even if you are not a current LSU online instructor, you should still get plenty of good information that you can apply to your course or to your roles. So you're definitely still welcome to be here and learn all the good stuff that we're going to be doing. So I see we have about 60% of our participants. It looks like we have kind of a mix of people who have taught a fully online course, about half and half there. As far as comfort with using Moodle, it looks like a little bit more than half are very comfortable. A few are somewhat comfortable. No one has said that they're not comfortable. I will say there's no shame if you're not comfortable with it. Our hope is that while we're not going to be doing like a full Moodle tutorial during this session, we are hoping that the concepts that you learn here will be helpful in your delivery of a Moodle course. And it looks like most people here are either fully teaching or intend to teach an online course through LSU Online. So very excited to learn a little bit more about y'all. Thank you for participating in the poll. Let's go ahead and get started with our content, shall we? So I'd like us to begin by considering who our online students are and what they need or what they're looking for in their education. There's a survey from Best Colleges in 2022 of about 1,800 current and prospective online students, remote learners, and graduates of online programs. These participants revealed the following characteristics of online learners. You'll see on the screen that the majority of current online students are between the ages of 25 to 44. The majority of these students work full-time or part-time, and that the majority of these students are enrolled for career-related reasons. So we can predict that the majority of online students might be what's called non-traditional learners. A lot of times you might think, oh yeah, higher ed, it's the students, the 18 to 23 who are just coming out of high school. Maybe they took a gap year, but they're maybe in their younger 20s. Online students don't typically fit that mold. You get a wider variety, and as you see here, they have a lot of commitments, not just simply they're not just here for college, they're here for their career and they may be juggling other responsibilities and priorities in their lives. The flexibility of online courses allows these working professionals to learn around their responsibilities and schedules while balancing work commitments, parenting, and family time. So, while these are general characteristics of online learners, there are additional strategies you can use to learn more about your individual students and their needs. Some of those examples include like having a discussion with your program director or department chair about trends in student demographics that they've seen so far in the program. So, for example, a conversation you can have with them is asking like what kind of like transfer or non-transfer students they might be seeing come through the program, working professionals, military students. Another way that you can learn more about your students and better understand their needs is to administer a survey at the beginning of each term. You can even include a self-assessment at the start of your course so that you can coordinate your instruction accordingly. For example, let me pull up the screen right here. Okay, can everybody see Moodle on the screen? Okay. So like for example, in this particular course, it was a AWS course about the principles of cloud computing. So before the course even begins, in the very beginning, they have a questionnaire for the students to complete. And it's kind of an opportunity for students to be able to share like their current knowledge level, their familiarity with certain concepts. Kind of talk about to like further explain their reasoning. So like this is not like a graded assignment that the students complete, but it's an opportunity, as they're kind of introducing themselves to the instructor and kind of giving the instructor an idea of where those students are coming from, which will give the instructors an opportunity to get an idea of what sort of like entry points the students are coming from. And, a big reason why you would want to have this kind of information is that as you are updating your course, as you're revising it for future delivery of the course, you might consider like, okay, if a lot of people are coming in from this particular professional background, think about like, well, what kind of skills do they have coming into this course? What are some maybe like skill gaps that students have? What are like areas that they might struggle with, and how can you as the instructor sort of like continue to like improve the design of the course. So that kind of information is very valuable, and a great opportunity is right in the beginning of your course, including sort of that opportunity to learn about them some more. You might also find it helpful to include supplemental resources in the course ready to go for students who need them. So for example, you can kind of pre-pick ahead of time, like, okay, if you learn that like a lot of students are missing sort of like a fundamental concept about cloud computing, for example, maybe you include some resources that are like, well, what is cloud computing? What is it used for? And be able to have those resources ready to share with your students. With this plan and with this in mind, you can plan ahead and examine your classroom policies and materials to kind of ensure that you meet the diverse needs of your students. As you're facilitating your course, you can keep an open line of communication with them and allow students to voice any concerns that they have about their experience in your course, the program, or their education overall. So, to summarize, we should consider the difference in how today's online students differ from what we consider traditional students. The students who, enroll once they've completed high school. Their needs and life experiences might differ in what they look for and what they value in a learning experience. Let's talk about theory for just a couple minutes. So, regardless of students' personal reasons for enrolling in an online course or program, adults learn differently than children. Adult learning theory is guided by Andragogy, or the study of how adults learn, which was first introduced by the adult educator Malcolm Knowles. To kind of break down this word real quick, you may have heard the word pedagogy if you teach, which is just generally called learning theory, which is a type of learning theory. Pedagogy typically some people use it agnostically. They might say that it's, no matter what, it's learning theory is pedagogy. A lot of times, pedagogy, vocabulary wise, actually kind of refers to like the student, like young student learners, versus andragogy is more of like for adult learners. So there's a little bit of a fun fact for you today. Um, this slide includes Knowles's adult learning assumptions. So one of which is that like the motivation to learn evolves over time. So as we mature, our motivation to learn becomes internal. For example, you likely signed up for this workshop because you were motivated by the value of what you would learn rather than what would happen if you didn't sign up. It's not like we were saying, oh, you're fired if you don't come to this, or we didn't say like, okay, we're going to give you $20 if you come to this session. You there was a more intrinsic motivation to attend today's session. So adults generally will see the intrinsic value in knowledge and are less influenced by external forces like punishment or rewards. Adults in general are ready to learn when the situation requires learning or when the content is relevant to their situation. So you kind of think to yourself, like, what's in it for me? What am I going to learn that is going to be helpful in my career? So in this example, you might have signed up for this workshop because you're either currently teaching or you're about to teach an online course, so this information is more relevant to you immediately as something that you're going to be working on. So our readiness to learn becomes more oriented to the developmental tasks of our social and work related roles. Our past experience is key. Think about like we don't learn in a vacuum. Over time, adults accumulate knowledge and experience through which we filter all of our new learning, right? So it's not like you just learn a discrete set of facts and you move on with your life. You kind of connect to what you've previously learned and kind of think ahead to how you're going to apply it to your everyday situation. So there might be something you learn here today that you might have to like mull over or analyze or deeply consider because it doesn't quite fit in with an experience you've had in the past. But you can sort of use the context of what you've learned before to kind of make use of what you've learned and be able to apply it. Adult learners also are self-directed. It's related to the concept of learning independence. So as we get older, we become more independent and self-directed learners, or, that's the hope, right? This can be seen when an adult decides that they would prefer to sign up for a workshop rather than read a book on the same content. So you can kind of think about this like if you're teaching your course, if they're doing a particular project, you may give them like different options for how they complete that project. For some people, maybe writing something is their best way to approach it. Or you might decide, well, rather than just writing it, you could give them an option to, deliver a presentation, record a video, something that helps, demonstrate that they've picked up on this skill, but kind of giving them that opportunity to be self-directed learners. Our orientation to learning changes as adults. We look for the immediate application of knowledge rather than just like you're going to apply it at some time in your life. So our orientation shifts from one subject-centered problem to one that's more problem-centered. So, for example, this workshop shares strategies that you can apply immediately in your course, or you might be able to identify a strategy to solve a specific problem that you're facing. So, um, with those in mind, what are some ways that we can meet the needs of our learners? We're going to discuss that next. Before we get to the specific strategies, I'd like you to think of an online training that you may have taken in the past. What made that training experience valuable or memorable versus something that was painful to get through? Go ahead and type in the chat some of your thoughts, or if you would like to get on the microphone, you can click the raise hand button, and I'll give you control of the mic. So to restate, what was something that was effective or memorable versus something that was more of a pain to get through? All right, so right out of the gate, Sarah says the course content, the passion from the instructor was something that was memorable. And I think about this in my own life, right? Like I used to teach math and I remember taking math courses. I enjoyed math, but I still remember that one math course I took. It was a geometry course in high school, and it just did not seem like that instructor had much passion for it, and it just felt like a total slog. It made it hard to be motivated to do it, because it when you're learning geometry, it could be challenging because it's a different way to think about math versus if someone was more passionate about it, like when I took algebra 2 and calculus. I kind of it helped motivate me to sort of see that relevance. Let's see. Lots of reading, painful. Laura says getting a chance to do hands-on relevant activities. Once again, going back to that sort of what's in it for me kind of thing. Let's see. Natasha said connecting content to real world examples. Yes, I bet back when I taught math, one of my big things was like, okay, okay, this is maybe just a personal preference of mine, but I always liked when I taught like seventh grade math, for example, I would say like, well, can I connect it to food? Can I connect it to shopping? Can I connect it to something else that's fun that sort of makes it relevant? And even like courses where you might be teaching a more abstract concept, maybe how can, instead of not necessarily applying the specific concept, how can you apply the skill to everyday life? So even if you're teaching something more abstract, you might be teaching them a critical thinking skill and connecting it to things that they can do. All right, let's see. So, Zoom calls with instructors that actually wanted the students to succeed. Yes, getting opportunities to allow students kind of that FaceTime, not literally FaceTime out like Apple FaceTime, but an opportunity to, have sort of that face-to-face discussion, uh, kind of helps with connecting to that instructor, connecting with your students. Okay, I like Tiara mentioned like graphs, spreadsheets, graphics. I'll definitely second in on that. That having those opportunities to learn in different styles, I find helps. Variety is kind of the spice of life, right? I think I saw earlier that lots of reading in a course can be kind of painful. And so finding ways to sort of break up those long readings with maybe relevant videos or opportunities for them to reflect or see like a case study or a simulation or something like that. Yeah, kind of like Rachel said, hands-on learning experience by giving them an opportunity to connect. So yeah, lots of great examples in here. So I encourage you to read the chat for anything that I didn't mention specifically. Um, so some other strategies that you can incorporate in your online course include, okay, so some of these were already mentioned, maybe in a different way. So one, providing opportunities for self-directed learning, like the example I mentioned earlier, maybe there's more than one way to show that they learned a specific skill. Again, connecting to those real world examples or relating concepts to a specific career skill, using an authentic assessment. So when we say authentic assessment, we're talking about, you know, what is the assessment to learn that to demonstrate that they've learned the skill beyond just like your typical like quiz exam research paper. Um, I don't have the link on hand at the moment, but on the LSU online faculty support website, there's an instructional video about using authentic assessment. I forget if it's a video or a resource. I remember it was very helpful though, and it talked about authentic assessments like project-based learning, ways to apply real life skills to the concepts to real life skills and sharing your own experience in the field. So a lot of times, don't be afraid to kind of step outside of that textbook, right? As a subject matter expert in your field, you probably have a lot of great previous experiences that you can connect to with students and kind of help things become more relevant. So, to use a real world example, there's a quote from Robert John Meehan, which is, learning becomes relevant only when we connect it with the student's reality. And that one always that kind of makes me think back to that real world example. So for example, like in nursing, you might provide a case study of a patient and ask students to assess and create a healthcare plan. Or for a business course, developing like a business or marketing strategy or a sales plan for a real or imaginary company in the student's area of interest. Or like in a computer science course, troubleshooting a buggy or problematic piece of code, developing a website or app to solve a particular problem or meet a set of criteria. Or like there was a business course that I worked with where the instructor did kind of like a Shark Tank style activity. It's like an opportunity for students to practice that process of putting together a business plan. So, one thing that we're going to talk about now is generative AI. Like I mentioned earlier in the session, this is not the purpose of this is not to like talk all about what generative AI is, but to kind of share just some very brief information about it. It is an exciting topic. Some people may also be very like nervous about it. The point of this part is just to kind of assist you with implementing some strategies and look at some examples that you could use to meet the needs of your learners. So for example, this to be kind of hammy here, this definition was provided from using ChatGPT. But in general, generative AI is like using artificial intelligence systems that have the capability to create or generate content such as text, images, and other data, often in the form of a creative or human-like manner based on patterns and data it's learned from. Uh, there are hundreds of tools that can generate different types of content. The most common one we see usually get referred to are like ChatGPT, but you have your other ones like you know, Gemini, Copilot, and so on and so forth. We definitely encourage you to consider as it's appropriate, consider generative AI to support course facilitation, but we want to be clear that it's not meant to be a replacement for you as the instructor. You know, your expertise and guidance as a faculty member is the irreplaceable impact on student learning, fostering critical thinking, and personal growth, and, you know, things that AI is not able to replicate. That being said, you might consider using AI to implement some strategies discussed here. So, some ways that you might use a text-based generative AI, such as ChatGPT, would include creating a learning plan for a new concept. You could, you know, use it to help sort of create a scaffolded learning plan to kind of like help break it down to make it easier to grasp. Brainstorm how you might relate certain concepts to real world examples or current events. Um, One thing to keep in mind is that some tools are not necessarily connected to like live internet, so they may not always be able to create uh current event, you know, to relate to current events based on the content that it's trained on. So you would want to use ones that might, you know, if you want to use something that connects more, you know, you might use something like Perplexity, which is a AI powered search engine. You could brainstorm how you relate concepts to a specific career skills. You might also prompt AI to suggest a variety of different assessment types to evaluate a particular skill or concept, such as writing or video assignments, doing a portfolio. And these ideas can be revised to add real world applications to make them more authentic. And lastly, you can prompt the tool to create discussion forum prompts that encourage students to actively engage in a lively conversation or apply the concepts to a real world scenario. Um, One thing that I want to underline here, as I said earlier, the purpose of generative AI here, you know, using it is not to replace your abilities as an instructor. And it would be important for me to also emphasize here that anything that you do use that is created using generative AI, you should always apply your expertise as the instructor or subject matter expert to make sure that one, it's accurate if you use it, and two, that that you apply your own voice to it as well. That you are, you know, that it's not just, you know, typing in a prompt and then copying and pasting, you know, the generated results into your Moodle course. You know, you want to be authentic with your students and let them know, like, you know, that that instructor review was still done through this process, you know, to make sure that you're giving students kind of like the best of you, right? So you may use it to help brainstorm something, but that might just be the starting point. And something else too, real quick, is just, you know, don't be afraid if you do play around with this stuff. Just make sure that you, you know, a lot of tools give you an opportunity once you get the output to be able to type like a response to it to further like tweak your prompt and continue to, you know, get like a revised output as well. Um, if you haven't already, I would also suggest taking time to kind of reflect on your individual philosophy of the use of AI in teaching and learning and how you might use generative AI to complement your teaching. This is especially important because in a lot of cases, AI use can kind of be like the Wild West right now. You know, different students and instructors may have different, you know, goals and purposes of using it or may not allow it whatsoever. So kind of figuring out what priorities you have with it and what you allow and don't allow, and really making that kind of front and center, letting students know, like in your syllabus, for example, you know, what's allowed, what's not. So, for example, do you allow it in your course? Do you allow it without restrictions? Do you allow it with like the restriction of they need to disclose when it's being used? Do you not allow it at all? And so the Center for Academic Success, the CAS at LSU, actually has some sample syllabus statements that you could use if you need to kind of like think through how you would want to incorporate it in your course. If you're interested in learning more about AI and its uses in creating and facilitating teaching and learning, we actually have a AI resources hub that I'm going to go ahead and paste the link for right here. Um, you can bookmark that. That includes a link to a previous workshop that we've done for it, a database of relevant articles, and a one-sheeter that you can use to kind of look at some examples as well. We also like to focus on talking about instructor presence. So, the online environment is a unique and often isolating experience for students and instructors compared to their experience in face to face courses. Teaching online requires a different set of approaches and skills. Because students are typically working asynchronously and at their own pace, designing and facilitating a quality online course takes preparation and engagement from the instructor. And as the instructor, you set the tone for your class, right? A term that you may have heard or read in articles is talking about instructor presence. One definition of this term comes from Kassinger, 2004. Um, where they describe it as the interaction and communication style, as well as the frequency of the instructor's input into the class discussions. So, in other words, it means, being there for your students. Studies indicate that high levels of instructor engagement lead to higher levels of student achievement, greater likelihood of graduation, and deeper satisfaction. And in online courses, we're not just trying to replicate some of the humanizing interactions in face-to-face courses. So, not just like eye contact, nodding, casual banter, that sort of thing. We're also talking about intentionally creating moments of exchange, feedback, personal framing, and the learning that our students experience. So, for example, what kind of office hours do students have an opportunity to meet with you live to kind of talk through problems that they're having? Or is there an opportunity for students to be able to get feedback from you? If they, submit a research paper, what kind of response are they getting from you? Are they getting like a graded rubric back? Are they getting some personalized feedback? Are they getting like a feedback document? Or is the instructor reaching out to send like a class-wide announcement once a week to kind of talk about like key takeaways and, class-wide feedback? Those sort of opportunities, even though they're not like physically present with you, it kind of gives students sort of like that feeling that like this is like a lived-in course. It's not just sort of like this online thing that they go in and they go and submit their paper and then they move on, with their lives. They get an opportunity to sort of connect with you as the instructor. So throughout the course, it helps to have a strategy for being present and active in your course. You might, in addition to some of the ideas I just shared with you, you might have students, you might make like a video that introduces yourself to your students. You might have a video that introduces specific modules and topics. So when I send out the presentation later, we actually have two examples here that you can click on and get a chance to sort of see kind of like the elevator pitch, for example, in one of these modules. For example, what is like really quick, what is kind of like the main idea of this module and why should you care, that sort of thing. um you don't have to be talking to students live or showing your face to establish instructor presence. We'll be discussing additional strategies for establishing, maintaining, and enhancing your presence or engagement with students in the coming slides. So let's look into some instructional activities you can include to facilitate engagement in online courses. For example, you have discussion forums. This is again, you'll be able to have access to all of these links to kind of peruse these examples. If you're having difficulty drafting an engaging discussion forum, I can point you back to the previous example of prompting a generative AI tool to generate a few suggestions. Um, of course, again, with your review and approval as the instructor of the course. Don't be afraid also to engage with others in your department. If they're, your colleagues may have other suggestions for what kind of questions could really like engage students. And when I think about discussion forums, by the way, one topic I like to share with the faculty members I work with is I call them sticky issues and hot buttons. Obviously, you want these discussions to be both engaging and respectful with each other, but you want to have questions that sort of like give students an opportunity to maybe step outside of their comfort zone or an opportunity to share a little bit of their opinion with sort of like the supporting materials of what they've learned in the module. So, kind of like if you're in a face-to-face classroom, you wouldn't want to just ask a student a yes/no question, right? You would want to kind of have those hows and whys and what ifs and all of those sorts of questions that kind of engage students beyond and get an opportunity not just to engage with you, but also in their content, but also to engage with one another. Other examples would be to do group activities and projects. And I know sometimes you might roll your eyes and think to yourself, oh man, group projects can be challenging. And yeah, I definitely acknowledge administering a group project or activity can be challenging both in face-to-face and in online environments. But if you take the time to set up some clear expectations, help students figure out how to like set roles and time and have like a structured timeline for when to make submissions and what a process would be to help sort of like resolve disputes, you could absolutely have really engaging opportunities for students to benefit from one another in those sort of group projects. And one thing I always used to tell students when they would groan about a group project is, well, our careers and a lot of what we do in everyday life is group projects, right? Even if we're not submitting something for a grade, you may collaborate with a colleague to submit an assignment or even like in your marriage, right? That's a group project. You and your spouse are, kind of running your household and, taking care of your home. So that's always how I like to connect it to my students. And then also giving students and yeah, exactly, Laura. Life is a collaborative project. Even if you're a solo person in your position, you may collaborate with clients in some way or another. So there's always some element of group work, whether people like it or not. And our role as facilitator could be to help students sort of see the value and have a good experience with it. Um, I also like the opportunities for students to give each other peer-to-peer feedback. So, for example, maybe as part of a course project, maybe there's an opportunity for students to post to a discussion forum and share project ideas and give feedback to one another. That kind of opportunity for peer review, you know, um, it can be really intimidating to turn in, a high stakes project at the end of a course. But if you kind of establish those opportunities for students to get feedback not only from their instructor but also their peers, that prospect may be less intimidating and also connecting back to their everyday skills and career skills. It's generally not realistic in a business environment to just turn in one iteration of a project and be done with it. You'll probably have like different phases, like a proposal phase and opportunity to get feedback from, your colleagues and things like that. So it kind of prepares them for that everyday sort of environment as well. There are also lesson activities that you can do. So in Moodle, there's the lesson tool that you can use where you can either be a linear lesson or it can sort of be like a branching pathway where depending on what questions students answer will take them down different paths in a lesson. You can also include instructional videos, graphics, or resources. And again, we have links here that you can refer to when we send out the resources. Um, and then also the going back to student instructor engagement opportunities, posting weekly announcements and reminders, having like an Ask the Instructor forum. I'm a fan of virtual office hours. The best part about virtual office hours to me is like even if a student doesn't even if a student doesn't come in, it's like, well, it's a time that I was going to be at my computer, already working anyway, right? So like you could have like Zoom open in your background, you turn on like the waiting room with the doorbell setting turned on, and then that way you're working, and then when you hear the doorbell ring you can let a student in, chat with them about what they need help with, and then other students, can sort of like line up in that waiting room as they kind of wait for you and still give an opportunity to kind of make that FaceTime with your students. So a lot of this stuff is things that we've already talked about before, but really kind of like giving that timely, individualized, meaningful feedback and check-ins with students who are falling behind as well. Nothing to me says engagement and instructor presence more than, keeping an eye on your data as you're facilitating the course and noticing, okay, most students are in module 2 at this point of the term, but oh, there's a number of students who are here in module 1. What's going on with them? And reaching out to them, checking in, how are things going? Is there anything that you're stuck on? Anything I can help you to kind of get you moving? To kind of let them know, you care, right? And that the support is there, and that students don't feel isolated in their course. Online teaching requires students to engage in what's known as regular and excuse me, substantive interaction. That's also called RSI, as you can see me tripping over my words, right? This means that faculty should maintain frequent interaction and engagement with their students around the academic content of their course. Engaging in RSI is one aspect of what delineates an online course from like a correspondence course. This is especially important for the federal financial aid disbursement that students get, and and also universities get, and it's a federal requirement. So, for example, federal financial aid does not pay for correspondence courses. We have a one-sheeter that I'm going to share in the chat that has kind of a breakdown of the four components of RSI. Here, let's just focus real quick on these criteria. So, instructors should be initiating interaction. So it's not all, it's not just, students reach out to you with questions, but it's like opportunities for you to like send announcements to the students, provide them with feedback, uh, all of that sort of stuff. The interaction should be regular and frequent. So it's not just like one message in the beginning saying, all right, welcome to the course. Good luck. It should be substantive. So it's not just like, well, how are you doing? What are you hoping to learn? There should be some academic element to it. The instruction should also be with an instructor that meets the accrediting agency standards. So something to discuss with your department if you have questions about that. There's also academic engagement activities. So in this particular case, federal regulations, requiring the confirmation of attendance in order for students to receive federal aid. The confirmation of attendance in online courses is achieved by students completing an activity in Moodle by the census date, which is the final date for adding courses for credit and making section changes. And if the activity's in a third-party publisher site, instructors are required to post that grade to Moodle within 48 hours of the census date. If there's no academic activity available and students are not able to provide evidence of participation, it results in a delay in the disbursement of financial aid to students. So this confirmation is required for all students. and you should plan to provide qualifying active academic engagement activities before the census day to assist students in maintaining their federal financial aid. As far as so far, we've discussed who online learners are, their needs and motivations, and strategies on how to engage with students, as well as examples of instructional activities to engage students. But we also have tools and features in Moodle that can help with student engagement and facilitation in your course. So for this portion of the workshop, I'm going to turn things over to Phoenix.
Hi. So let me take over sharing. Okay, so we're gonna go over a few features that are kind of important to understand about some of these activities or some of the most commonly used activities, including what exactly their purpose is. So, student communication, as he said, is a very important feature of what an instructor needs to do. They need to be able to communicate both individually and on scale to their students as an entire course. And so one of the best ways to do a course level communication is that every course that's created has an announcements forum. The announcements forum can only be posted in by the instructor. It is not one that can be posted to by students or anything. The instructor and anyone with instructor level privileges. So if you assign a TA or you have a co-instructor or whatever, they can also post to it. Um, when things are posted, it is also what is called force subscribe. Therefore, any posts that are made to it when the edit window is over, which is 30 minutes, there's also a way to bypass that. It will automatically email that post to everyone in the course. And that way you can have it. So, you would just add discussion topic. If you want to send it right away, you just click advanced. And there's this with no editing time delay. And that would make it send right away. This is a really good way to be able to communicate to your course as a whole because it allows that information to not only be sent to them via email, but it also keeps it in a centralized location, typically at the beginning of your course, unless you've moved it, that students can also reference back to. So if they've deleted the email or for some reason filters have affected it in their email, they still have a place that they can find all that information in the order that it was posted. Also, forums can be a useful tool for getting an assignment, an activity for students to do. There are two very commonly used types of forums, and that is set up during the settings phase of it. Um, though, there is the standard forum for general use, which means that everyone can make a topic, everyone can reply to anybody, etc. And you would be able to do that. The other one is a Q&A forum. In a Q&A forum, the instructor sets up the forum, and then the instructor needs to make an initial post. Once that initial post is made, all students reply to that post. And until their edit window of 30 minutes is over, they cannot see any other students' post. This forces them to have more original content. They can't just kind of scan what other people have posted and paraphrase everyone else or kind of come up with an amalgamation type post. They have to be able to think of it on their own, create their post, and then after the edit window is over, they can then see other people's content. And if the instructor is requesting it, they can also then reply to other students' content. Uh, just as an FYI, this, like many other features, Turnitin, which I'll go into a little bit more when we talk about assignment, is available in forums as well. So it can run a similarity check and an AI checker, provided that it reaches its minimum requirements for either one. The there are also two ways that they are graded, and you can have both turned on. Therefore, make sure you pay attention and only turn one on. One is whole forum grading. What whole forum grading does is it allows you to see every single post and reply made by a single student in that forum in one place. and it'll give you a link to maybe if they were replying, what the other people were posting, so that you can see that they were contextually giving an actual decent reply rather than just throwing information on a screen. But that way, especially if you were giving grades where you say it's 10 points for the form overall, but 5 are for initial post and 5 are for 2 replies, well, then you can see all of that in one place and go, okay, yes, they definitely gave their initial post, they gave replies, good. The other type is ratings. Ratings, what it does is you set a maximum points. As you are reading the post, there is a drop-down menu at the bottom of the post that allows you to give the student a grade. So, for instance, in this one, there is a sample student forum, and with it, you would click on it, and you see here, this one was set up for ratings. It gives you all the possible options, and you would just go through to the next one, see it as well, give a rating. That is how that one works. You also see when they posted it. So if you have a due date, you can see that it's after the due date. And if you give any kind of uh, grade reduction for being late, you can do that as well. Additionally, forums can be set up so that you can't grade anything that's late. It's an option. Replying to forums is simply done by here. If you're wanting to uh, create an original forum post, it's done with the add discussion topic. And that way, and in replies, you do have an option to reply privately, so that if you want to give a reply to a student and that only that student gets to see, you can do that. Or if you leave this unchecked, it'll reply in such a way that any other student can see it, so that it might be useful feedback for everyone. So you do have both options. The other thing, forums can also use a rubric, which is referred to in as advanced grading. That is created separately. There are information in the Grok articles. I don't have time to go in that today, but you can use rubrics for them. And so this one is set up to be able to use one. And so this one is also set up to be whole form grading. So here we have the grade users, and it will show us that user didn't post anything, that I didn't. But here you have the post made by this person, and here you have the rubric that was created in order to be able to give a score. And you have score out of 2, score out of 1. And in this, you would generally say more detail what the criteria is. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Next, we have assignments. Close. Assignments are an activity where students can upload. Again, if you put it, yes, it depends on whether or not you give. So they cannot see the comments that are only the student who's graded can see a comment that is in the rubric. But if you give a reply to a post, it'll be just the same as any other, where it is, if you don't tell it to make it private, it will be a public reply, or you can check a box for a private reply. So both are options. But the rubric itself and anything you put into the rubric is only visible to the student who is being graded, as well as the grades themselves. Good question. Thank you, Sarah. So we have assignments. Assignments is a place where students can upload file-based documents. They have a limit of a 500 meg size that can be uploaded. They can be Word documents, Excel documents, PowerPoints, image files, etc. You can, so important things to remember with them are that the purpose is for the instructor to be able to receive content in an organized manner and be able to give feedback. There are a variety of ways to do that, including the Turnitin tool, which I will give a brief mention of in this specific assignment. There is also, you could do a rubric such as advanced grading like the other one, but there are also rubrics that you can make and turn it in. And you can also re-upload files back to them in this as well. Although Turnitin allows you to grade it all online and not have to download things, so that's also a useful aspect. Assignments have this is the only activity where the due date is not with all the other dates of availability. The due date is down here. That is when it's due. That will show up in the calendar to the students. A cutoff date is a date that they can no longer submit after. So if you have a hard deadline, you can set a cutoff date. So for instance, in the courses that I teach, I give them 3 days in which they lose a letter grade each day. And then after 3 days, there's a cutoff and they can no longer submit and they get a zero in the activity. Because in addition to working in the Faculty Technology Center, I'm also adjunct faculty. I teach one course a semester in the LSU Library Science program, School of Information Science. And I've been doing that for, I think this is my 7th year teaching, 7th or 8th year teaching. So I have also experienced all this on the instructor side as well. The uh, the turn it in can be turned on here. You would just say enable it, yes. You can tell it to show the similarity port. That is the theoretically plagiarism check. It checks for similarities between things. That can also, you can tell it to not include quoted materials so that you're not going to get everything flagged, even when it's actually quoted. But it can also catch paraphrases and such as well. So that's a good, useful tool. And in the thing, it tells you what the sources are. So you can kind of look and see, oh no, that just happened to be a similar phrase, but the article has nothing to do with this. They weren't actually quoting that article or paraphrasing that article. It's okay. Versus other ones where you go, yep, nope, this is very definitely this, and they don't have quotes and they don't have a citation. So this is a problem in which you might need to get student affairs involved in. You can choose whether or not to have it go to the repository. If it goes to the repository, all future papers, not only for you, but anyone else in Turnitin anywhere, will also be checked against those. So that will also prevent people from being able to reuse papers in other courses unless the instructor gives them explicit permission, or at other universities selling their papers, etc. And this is where you would decide whether or not it would use a rubric. Um, Turn it as a useful tool that way. You can also give files for how you want it to run, such as what the rubric's going to look like, an example of the assignment. You can have those files built into the activity as well as your description of the activity. These are all very useful tools for this. And then when you can also give an override. So if you have a cutoff date and a student gives you a valid excuse, there is the ability to give an override. That also applies to quizzes. Students also who are registered with Office of Disability Services and may need extended test taking time or such, overrides can work with those. I'll mention that more in quizzes. But assignments, the way they work is you would go here, you would say view all submissions, and you would be able to see any submissions that were done. So for instance, this one was done, it was done well after so you can see in red that it was done well after the deadline. And it will show you there's this kind of percentage of similarity if you use Turnitin, and you would be able to click that pencil and it would open this Turnitin feedback studio in which you could then see the paper, uh, in which case this is actually one of mine from grad school. Uh, it'll give you an AI report and it will give you what it thinks. And if it's a really concerned flag, it'll be here, and all other potentials are here. This is also if you were using a rubric where that would be, and your ability to even use quick notes. So you can click there, give a text, bubble, directly type text, or some of these quick ones are ones that are commonly used, and you can use that. Very useful tools. So, and students, when they get to that first screen where you would click view all submissions, students actually have an interface there to submit. So that is where, and once they have submitted and Turnitin has run its thing, if you allow them to see their similarity score in advance, it'll show them that. And then once you have finished giving your feedback and your grades, it'll make that available to them there as well with a pencil with something that looks like this for them as well. and you would be able, and if you grade and turn it in, it will push it here. Don't try to grade all your students at once. We have found that sometimes it runs into some issues if you do over 10 at once. So grade a few, close it out, come back here, let it push the grades, do a refresh, go again, keep grading. Sorry. Finally, uh, one of the last activity we're going to look at are quizzes. We have training on quizzes. There are videos, and we also have someone who runs training once a semester, usually on quizzes. Quizzes are an activity that actually requires a multi-phase setup. You have to set up this part, which is where it will be taken, and then you actually create the quiz either by pulling from a question bank or adding questions yourself. Some of the important things to note with quizzes are that timing open and close, and then you can set a time limit. So if you want it to be, like in my course, I generally give them a week to take an exam. They have the whole week that it's available, but once they start an exam, they have a very limited window of time to take it. So say it's a midterm, I might give them an hour and a half to take it. They could take it anywhere within it, but they only have that hour and a half to take it. The most commonly used one is the default of open attempts are submitted automatically. That is also the one that runs into the fewest issues. Some of the others occasionally run into issues. So that one, if they're in the middle of typing, will save in the middle of the word that they're in the middle of typing and automatically save it for the student if they run out of time. Keep in mind, close quiz is the priority time over time limit. So if you have a close time of say 11:59 p.m. on today and you give them an hour to take the exam, but they started at 11:30, they will run out of time at 11:59, not an hour to take the exam. So it is whichever of these come, it is this one is the priority, but if this one comes first, this one will end it. The Uh, Another important one is the review options. This is how you can tell whether or not for students to when they see their grade. Points is how they see their grade in the grade book. Immediately after the attempt means as soon as they hit submit, they'll be able to see their grade. Later while the quiz is still open, so if you have it open, say all day, it'll be a couple of hours later, 2 to 3 hours later, they'll be able to see their grade, but it gives it a buffer window basically. And then if you have a close time after the quiz is closed, so for instance, in my courses, this is what I do because I don't want anyone to see what they got or, and especially things like what their attempt was, et cetera, until after everyone has finished taking it. So when the quiz is closed, then they will be able to see their grade and everything else. So that's an important one to remember. You can also, if you have essay questions, turn it in for that as well, so that you can use that to be able to check for both AI and plagiarism. AI does require it to be in prose format, which means paragraph format. It also must be a minimum of 300 words for it to be able to run the AI checker. So if it is under 300 words and is not in paragraph format, such as say code for anyone who is in computer science, it will not run an AI check on that. Once you have done these and created this initial location, that is when you would go and click on the name of the quiz. And this is where you would be able to give overrides to students. Um, this is also questions is where you would go to be able to see any questions that are added. So here I have a combination of some questions that were created in it. So this one was created here in the quiz, and then these are drawing from a variety of question banks and is randomly choosing them. Those are all options. So there are Grok articles on it. Our website has some training videos on it. You can always call us, or we do have a training usually once a semester on quizzes. So those are all some important things to keep in mind. Once someone has taken a quiz, you would see right here, I didn't actually have a chance to take a demo of this quiz with one of the students, but you would see here, it would tell you that, so you have allowed attempts, and you would see attempts 1 of 1 if you only had one student, or, 1 of 5 if there were 5 students, etc. You would see that, and you would be able to go view their quiz. You can also preview the quiz to see what it kind of looks like to the student by clicking preview quiz and starting attempt. And this is generally what it's going to look like to the students up to the point that you hit finish attempt. because you'll see here and then the submit, and then what you see after the submit is not available unless you give this part is not available unless you let students review their attempt. Under the review options, if you let them see their attempt, they would see this. But they would not see this until that option was made available based on what timing you chose it. But up to that, that's what it would look like for the students. Finally, the gradebook. Again, we also run training on gradebook. A few things that are important. Gradebook can be accessed through two locations. The If you are anywhere in the main pages of a course, you can click on the admin gear, and grades will take you to the grade book where grades can be entered directly, where you can see the entire collection. If you need to go to gradebook setup, that's also here. Gradebook setup shows you how it's laid out. It let you affect how the weights are done or change your weighting methods. Again, there's a whole section of training that is done on grade books, as well as a lot of videos explaining. We have three different major aggregation methods. These are all a variety of things. But the important one, you can also navigate here or here to other aspects. So if you're in gradebook setup, you can go to the gradebook itself through either of those means. And here you will be able to see all the different activities. If it is a manual grade item, so anything you create as an activity in Moodle will automatically add itself to the grade book if it has a grade value. If you set it up to be grade of none, it won't appear in the grade book. You can also give individualized feedback here in the grade book by coming here. So you would click the pencil next to the name of the assignment. You would click edit. And then if you want to give, you can do override for an individual one, or by clicking actions, you can say override all. And then you can give individualized feedback there and a grade here. You don't have to do the override if it is a manual grade item because that is expecting it to be manually input. The reason these are overrides is because these are Moodle activities that are expecting you to grade them at the activity. And then, and so this would be overriding it to do it here. Uh, and so that is uh, where you can also view how the students are doing. You can also access it by going to course tools and clicking on gradebook as well. It's another valid option. If you've gone into single view, by the way, you need to click on go back to gradebook to see the whole thing. If you leave from single view and you go back, it'll take you back to the single view, meaning a single assignment that you were last in until you go back to the actual full gradebook. So if you do that accidentally and you see that, don't freak out. Just go back, use the menu to go back to the main gradebook. It's just a feature of the way it's designed. Are there any specific questions that you have at this point? Like I said, we do have further trainings. You can call us for individualized training or for over the phone support for any of these issues. We have some training videos on the site that Mitchell will be making sure is included in follow-up emails that include trainings that on the forums, the quizzes, the gradebook, etc. And he'll include a link to Grok because there are a lot of Grok articles that are also very useful for all of this as well.
Thank you so much, Phoenix. Appreciate it. Let me also add on to what Phoenix was saying. Grok is a very useful website for tutorials related to Moodle. If you've never used it before, it can be a little overwhelming at first glance, but that search tool on there is very helpful. There's a lot of helpful Moodle tutorials and other technological kind of stuff too. One thing to note is that some of the Moodle related tutorials are going to be kind of centered around the LSU A&M one. That also similar to what LSUE Moodle has. Some of the other institutions like Alexandria or the HSC in New Orleans or Shreveport have different looking Moodles. In a lot of cases, there's very similar functionality between those Moodles, although sometimes it might be just a matter of trying to find the different button to try to find the same button might be located in a different place. So, for example, in LSU Alexandria's Moodle, there's not that like gear icon on the top right that Phoenix was showing. However, you might have a menu bar on the left-hand side where you can pull up the gradebook and pull up the gradebook setup from there. So, if you do have any questions about how to utilize that kind of stuff, your specific institutions may have specific departments that you reach out to. And, if you're working with a designer or have questions about who to reach out to, definitely, you can follow up with your teams to find the relevant resources. Um, Another thing I want to note too, as I was watching Phoenix's part, is that you'll notice when you're going through those settings menus, there are some gray question mark bubble icons. I find those are pretty helpful too in kind of getting a refresher on what certain things do, especially that review options menu, because I know sometimes I'll get questions that come to me as we're setting up the course going, when are students are allowed to view the grade in the grade book? And I've gotten complaints before about students not being able to access this, and it's like, well, okay, you can use that kind of question mark to kind of to get kind of a refresher on what a lot of those options mean. So definitely encourage checking those out as well. All right, so we're getting set to finish our session today. I just wanted to share a couple resources with you that are for sure helpful. One of them is the faculty resources and support website. When you're on the PDF, it's this very first link right here. It is a support website that has all sorts of things related to designing, developing, and facilitating an online course. So, for example, if you scroll down here, you have the Technology Hub that has tech resources and support information. We have under course design and development, you have all sorts of tutorials and other resources. For example, that authentic assessments active resource that I mentioned earlier is located here. Also, if you're kind of a little newer in Moodle, there's also the Getting Started in Moodle link right here that's super useful. Um, there's also the support services website. This is where you can find the Faculty Technology Center. So if you are through LSU A&M or LSU Unis, you can contact the FTC using this. I will mention I've actually had an appointment before with the FTC when I had some challenges helping an instructor with setting up a gradebook in their online course, and they were super helpful. So I definitely advocate for reaching out to them as well. Like I
Oh,
mentioned, go ahead,
and let
Phoenix.
me just mention one thing real quick.
Yes.
As you see, if you move near the bottom of our contact information, you'll see the FTC contact information. There's one
Hmm.
that says virtual walk-ins. On business days from 2 to 4 p.m., we have someone sitting in a Zoom session, ready to also take. So if you feel like you need to be able to share a screen so that we can really see what's going on versus just a phone call, we have someone in there every business day that we are open from 2 to 4 p.m. And if those hours are changed for any reason, such as we often have some people the weekend before final grades are due, we put in a couple of hours only in virtual walk-ins because the phone system is shut down on the service desk side. Then we are in virtual walk-ins for a couple of hours over the weekend, specifically the weekend between finals and final grades being due. So if there are any variations to our hours, those will also be posted there for the virtual walk-in hours.
Thank you so much, Phoenix. Yeah, and another thing on this site that I'll mention too is the in-residence support. So you could either book with the FTC team or with one of the design development team members that's familiar with your college. So, for example, if you are if you're like with the College of Science, for example, um, and you need some like design guidance in how you might like design an activity that would be engaging for your students, you can, schedule an appointment with me. And this website will give you under in residence support, will give you a list of, so for example, like College of Science, you can see like you might meet with Greg to for more maybe like Moodle related questions. But if you have questions about like creating like an engaging activity in a science or math course, you might book a consultation with me. And you could, we have all the different colleges here that are related to A&M right there as well. Um, Another resource here, we have the preparing and facilitating your online course checklist. That gives you kind of like a helpful checklist of tasks that you'll need to work on before the start of each term that you teach an online course. Kind of gives you reminders of setting up your course and ready, making sure that your course materials are imported if you're importing from a blueprint course, and important information about instructor presence. We definitely appreciate you all being here today. We're going to send a link to this feedback. So if you don't have the ability to capture this QR code right now, that is totally fine. A copy of the QR code will be available on the PowerPoint slides, and I'll also include a link to it. We appreciate your feedback to kind of get an opportunity to see what was useful about this session, what was maybe not so useful about this session, because we continuously work on improving our trainings to help you get the most out of your valuable time. So if you are willing to take a few minutes to complete a post-workshop survey, we definitely appreciate it. And thank you so much for attending our workshop today. We have 10 minutes to remaining. And if you have any questions about anything that we've discussed today, we're more than happy to stick around for those 10 minutes, and you can get on the microphone, or you can type your question in the chat. But if you don't have any questions, you're free to leave. And good if you're teaching this coming term online. Best of luck to you. We hope you have a great session. And again, don't forget about those helpful resources that are available to you.